Good morning and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about something you won't like, but since I'm evil, I think I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I've realized that many English speakers just speak English. And you may think, yeah, I don't need another language, I can go anywhere and everyone speaks my language. I must admit, I hate it when English speakers just come to me and say, oh, you don't know English. Oh, everyone should know it because it's the most important language in the world. Especially Americans, they can't accept you when you can't speak a perfect English. I mean, it's not my first language. I probably know more things than you, and not speaking English doesn't make me stupid. I think this so damn sad. I mean, you judge someone because he doesn't speak your language while you don't speak theirs? I mean, how is that fair? Secondly, I've realized some of them, they're so proud of not speaking any other languages. Well, I'm sorry guys, but why are you proud to be ignorant? It's against everything we learn. Yes, so this was the start, this was what made me think about this topic. I think I'm going to show you an interesting video that my region made to encourage us learning more than one language, because it's kind of symbolic, but I like it how it turned out. So this is the video. The basic idea is that knowing more than one language helps you better understand the world. I've read a really interesting quote somewhere, and it said, you live so many lives as the languages you speak. And I think it's true, because each language has its own peculiarities, has its own way of expressing things. And the more languages you speak, the more you realize that something just can't be translated, that there's this perfect word that describes what you have in mind, but it can be translated to any other language. So that concept, the way it is, can be expressed just in that language. And why is that? I think it's because that concept is typical of that language, of that culture, and the culture and the language are so enticed, are so connected, and someone else with a different culture won't even understand this idea that the language is conveying. I have one interesting thing that I've realized studying German. I know not every German is like this, that stereotypes and so on, and how they work. But generally, compared to Italians, Germans are way more rational. And you can see that in their language as well. So we used to think that German is such a hard language, but when you start learning it and you get to a certain level, I don't think you might notice this when you're an A1, so really low level. You realize that it's a simple language. So you have like one base word, like one verb, and with that verb, you add this small thing before, like for it, and you make a completely different verb. For example, schauen, look. And then you can form with this verb, adding a small thing before or after it, you can make another verb, but the meaning of this second verb is similar to the first one. So you have like this general verb that gives you the idea what you're doing, and all these others, this made with this base verb plus this small participle that have slightly different meaning. They're all of the same family, whilst Italian makes completely different verbs. So look, it's guardare. German has schauen, zuschauen, anschauen. That means different ways of looking. while Italian says guardare, osservare, and in Italian you have to learn so many completely different words. While German, you maybe read a new word you've never seen before, and you see this particle, this part that you know, so you can guess what it means in that context, and you learn it easier. So they say German is a hard language, but this helps a lot. But back to the culture, back to how languages are related to culture. They did an experiment somewhere. I think it was an American university, but I'm not sure of that. They took people speaking two languages, I think it was English and Chinese, and they asked them to complete sentences in both of the languages. What really caught my attention was this one sentence, and it was, when what I want, it's not what my family want. These women completed it in two different ways. When they had to complete this sentence in English, they said something like, when what I want, it's not what my family wants, I'll insist on it. And in Chinese, they completed it, when what I want, it's not what my family wants, it's a great sorrow. So the same person completed this sentence in two completely different ways according to the culture, to the languages in which they were writing it. Each language brought with it a completely different culture. And answering the comments on a video here on YouTube, some people told me I change my personality when I speak English and when I speak my mother tongue. I've guessed that maybe it depends on how you learn the language, because this person has been abroad and learned English abroad. I'm just guessing. But she might feel like a child when she speaks her mother tongue and be shy, because like a child she used to grow up like that. She had maybe bad experiences with it. While when she was abroad and was forced to learn and perfection her English, she was alone and had many different experiences that made her grow. And growing in another culture, growing with different habits, made her also speak in a different way, because she was used to behave in a different way when she spoke that language. So I think it's interesting to see how speaking different languages can make you basically change your personality, change your way to express yourself. Actually, it's not something I can relate to, because I feel myself any language I speak. So it's not a feeling I know. This happened to you. Please tell me your story. I'm really curious about this. How can this happen? And how is it that so many people tell that it happened to them? It's curious. I'd say it's curious. I think I'll end with a story about something that happened to me. I was on this train. I was coming back from Germany to Italy, and there was how is it called, the guy who checks your ticket. We were on the train. We were traveling, and this lady asked, are we on time? Are we getting there on time? And this guy replied, well, we're on time, but in a couple of hours we're going to switch the crew, and it's coming the Italian crew, so I'm not sure about it. So I think that speaking many different languages allows you to understand better the culture and where these things come from. And also in foreign countries, people actually think about you, because it's not translated. And every time, I can assure you, anytime you translate things, it's never a perfect translation. When you build a sentence, when you have many sentences together and you try to translate a full concept, you have to use one or more words that don't perfectly translate what the original author wanted to say, and you end up learning and understanding a completely different thing from what the author wanted to say. And I'm reading the Never-Ending Story in German, and I'm realizing it's not completely different. It was a great translation, the one I've been reading in Italian, but it's still different. And every book, every TV program, anything you might watch, it's different in the original language. And I think you're not going to understand it until you really know the language and the culture, and that doesn't mean reading it on the books. You have to go there and meet them and talk to them, and then you realize this world is so different. And I have this feeling that Americans tend to think about Europeans as stuck up, boring and annoying and whatever you might think. I think this comes from a different mindset. The same way we think Americans are ignorant and stupid. It might not be the case. It might just be these differences in our cultures that make us perceive those people, those people from over there are such different, but actually you're not going to understand why this is like this until you learn the culture. So that was it for today. I think I've spoken quite enough. What do you think about this topic? Do you speak more than one language? Do you like to learn some more? Did it ever happen to you that to change your personality when you switch language? And what are your general thoughts about cultures? I'm really curious to hear about them, so please write it here down in the comments, and see you next time.